we should be aware that what we create as artists is work that matters. And I know you hear often that society can live without art, that the economics go first, but there's no bigger nonsense than that. A society would die without art. A society would die without artists. So hello there and welcome to a new video. I would like to talk a little bit about the letters of C.P.E.BACH again. You know, we have done a book review on the letters of C.P.E.BACH in the English translation edited by and translated by Stephen Clark, Oxford University Press. I'll put up a link here in the video and in the description box if you want to check that video out. How many times we hear, and it's meant in a good way, but you could say also other things about that, not go into details, but how often you hear that we are lucky to make from our hobbies our profession. As well, the fact that when money is involved, that sometimes eyebrows are being raised and actually sometimes even questioning the legitimacy of asking something in return for what we do, because after all, it's a hobby. And if you are a true artist, and that's a typically 19th century view on artists, then you live for your art, and mixing these things with money is something that makes you kind of less artist-like. And so, off topic a little bit, a side notion, did Mozart die in poverty? Of course, he's painted in many biographies like that, but in fact he was one of the best earning musicians in Vienna in his last years. He threw much money away in clothing, but that's another aspect. But in the 19th century, they really would like to have him died as a martyr for his art, with a wife that after his death actually caused him to die, and after his death was greedy because he might make money of his works. But what Constanze actually did was, in a very manager-like way, business-like way, actually preserve much of his her late husband's work, and of course make money out of that. And what's wrong with that? It's the same with Schubert. Schubert is of course the ideal example for the 19th century and even today's still picture of musicians and composers. He died young and he died really poor, so that makes him a terrific example of the great artist in the 19th century picture. He was a great composer, by the way. So let's not forget that today still we live in a time where many of these 19th century conception models, so to say, still live. But to combine that, and certainly in the case of Mozart, that's always, and of Schubert, that's almost disgusting to actually, if you take this one step further, one would wish for a composer to die poorly, because that makes him after his death a very interesting person to talk about. But I think that's really nonsense. One of the aspects of C.P.E.Bach's life that's really interesting is his business-like instinct, and that clearly shows from his letters. And you know that C.P.E.Bach from the 19th century onwards, and maybe even from late 18th century, is attacked often of his painted actually as a kind of greedy person who was only talking about money, and I will talk on details. He belonged to the best of his profession as a composer and a player, and he had a very clear vision on his art and on his career. So a few months before he died, he wrote actually to his friend Breitkopf, the publisher, that, I quote, "From now on I will publish nothing more myself. All my debts are now settled correctly. I am very satisfied." So isn't that great if one can tell that? He did better than his father, who already was a very well respected person, one of the best paid civil servants of the city of Leipzig. Don't forget that. He was very high in hierarchy. But C.P.E.Bach lived in a more prosperous time than his father, and of course had also greater possibilities in publishing. So, and how did he actually achieve that? And that's an interesting part, because he of course wrote music that still today, I think in his case, is much underestimated. But he had some very clear ideas on that, and that marketing strategy is something that we can apply today. So in general, he asked Breitkopf, his publisher, to print his works and not publish them. So he was his own publisher. And that sounds really modern in a time today when recording labels are investing less in new names, when book publishing houses are investing less in new names, and people have to do it themselves. Then after that, he would announce the publication publicly. He asked for subscriptions. He sends the message out to at the same time to his agents, and today that would be called a community, gathering people around yourself as an artist by help of YouTube, subscribers on YouTube, as I do, a mailing list or whatever. So there is a very direct line between the work we do as artists and the people who buy it, who listen to it. So no one else in between, no company policies and so on. It's just the artist and his public. So that was the idea of C.P.E.BACH, and of course, in a broader sense, a very historical concept as well. So then, after he asked Breitkopf to print his works and estimate for costs, sent out a message, it would take about 1 year to from the announcement to the release of the work. And as today, delays were inevitably, and he was very annoyed by that, because he had to satisfy the subscribers, who in many occasions had already prepaid on the publications to come. So he had to explain why the delay was there. So even then, they were waiting eagerly for new work as today. It's not like in the time of Amazon.com where you order something and before you order it's already the package is standing is for your front door of your house. But there were schedules and there were dates and people were expecting to keep up with that. So, and after that, Bach was making sure that his work was reviewed in the newspapers, and he made sure that it was reviewed well. There is clear evidence of him controlling the editors involved. So he was a control freak on that, certainly. And so that the whole image of him being in control of every aspect, from all details of his prints to the financial aspects, was of course wonderful for him, for 19th century biographers to paint him as a kind of greedy person in opposition to his father, because they want to get rid a little bit of C.P.E.BACH, the great Bach at the end of the 18th century, and make place for the father. So, but that's another topic. And so it's, in one way or another, it's nice to see that modern times return to this one-to-one relationship that was in the 18th century actually the normal practice, and certainly heightened in the practice by C.P.E.BACH. And inevitably the scaling goes down, so the numbers on which we're talking go down, but that doesn't actually matter. And if I speak for myself, we do not have to sell next year 5,000 vinyl records if we publish them, the Bach partitas. It would be nice though, but if we were able to sell, let's say 350, I think we would have managed to have a break even. I'm still working on the calculations and prices, and it's not cheap to make final productions, I can tell you. But 350 is less than 5,000 that record companies are talking about, or 2,000, and even not think if a book publishing house will not think even to publish a new name today if they're not sure that you are a big name in the media and that they can return all the invested money in the first edition of your book. And I know what I'm talking about because I'm dealing with that as we speak. That's a side project of me. I've written a book, but that's another topic. But that's of course very sad, because that kills all creativity, and it's sad to see that by all these factors that come in between, from publication houses, labels, distribution centers, and stores actually where people can buy finally the product, the book or the CD, recording, whatever, that because of we have placed so many new steps in between, the prices go up, scaling goes up, connection will be lost between artist and the audience, which is reconstructed here in the social media, but that's another topic. But the artists, and that's the reality, is seeing very little money, if not nothing, from what he produces. And so the one-to-one relationship, and maybe also on concerts where the artist hires just a room and invites his community to play, make sure that the community who pays to access such a concert is sure that the money goes to the creator they support, like we did the Patreon page. Actually, that's very 18th century like. So the money is not going to all kind of side effects, organizations and things like that. It's directly going to the artist. So that's actually a very nice feeling that in the 18th century it was the same thing, and we have today more possibilities to make it happen. So at the end of this video, I would like to say it's a nice reflection, and what I would like to emphasize is that money is not something that we should shame ourselves for. We should be aware that what we create as artists, that matters. We should be aware of, and I repeat, we should be aware that what we create as artists is work that matters. And I know you hear often that society can live without art, that economics go first, but there's no bigger nonsense than that. A society would die without art. A society would die without artists in whatever form. And that should be written in full on our foreheads of all of us. We should remember that old 18th century master J.S.Bach, who instead of being painted as a greedy composer, learned as an important lesson: you have to make a living as an artist. So money is a part of our art. And tell everyone that Emanuel Bach told you so. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.